Claire, thank you for joining us today. For our audience, would you mind introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and the work that you do?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be with you. My name's Clare Stead. I'm the creator and founder of the Oliiki app, which is an app for parents from conception to build babies' brains in the first 1,000 days of life, and it's used by nurseries and parents to support baby development. I'm a teacher, education researcher, and I've worked across 3 continents, and I'm really passionate about helping ensure that our children reach their full potential and thrive through the use of amazing playful moments.
I'm going to start off really just focusing back on Oliiki, because I really love the work that you're doing there and everything else that comes with it. So you moved from being an education researcher to developing the Oliiki app for parents. What motivated this transition, and how do you believe that technology can change the way we engage with early childhood development?
Good question. So I changed from working in education research. Well, have I changed from education research? I don't know that I have. I probably brought it with me.
Indeed.
And all the experiences I've had along the way. But the reason that I do Oliiki, and I focused from primary age range down to 1,000 days, which is a very tight focus, is because I discovered the science of the brain development of the first 1,000 days. And for me, it was like switching the light bulbs on. I'd realized that I'd worked across these 3 continents, and I kept seeing children arriving and thriving in my classrooms, and other children would arrive and do everything in their power to not work and not do the work that we'd set about. They had amazing skills, but just they weren't manifesting in the way we wanted them. And I realized that I asked the question, what had happened to those children so that we got to the situation where some were thriving and some were not? And particularly as when they were little, if they'd seen a caterpillar on a leaf, they both would have been as captivated as each other on that caterpillar. So now then the question became what had happened and why. And I went on a journey to find that, and I found the science of the first 1,000 days. And for me, that was literally like turning the light bulbs on. I realized, oh my goodness, if we get this time when we're building the foundations of the brain right, we can literally give amazing, strong, firm foundations for everything else to grow on. And what that then made me realize was that we're being pretty unkind to our parents.
Yeah.
Because we aren't supporting our parents. We're showing our parents, nobody is there to support parents anymore. And so we're expecting our parents to just know what success looks like.
Yeah.
And we aren't helping them understand the benefit of play to support their child's development, nor do we show them what development looks like on the journey and trajectory of development that the child's going on, particularly in the period where we're literally building the brain on a daily basis, in fact second by second, because 1 million synapse connections, brain connections are being made every second. So if at times during the first 1,000 days. So if we get this right, what we're doing is we're giving them this amazing foundation on which they can build everything going forward. And that's why I kind of binned all the stuff that I was doing before, which was big, important stuff, and came back down to these 1,000 days, which seems really small, but actually they're life-changing days.
During your career, you've worked internationally, and including Zambia.
Yeah.
Which is sounds amazing, by the way. How did your experience of working in diverse environments influence your approach to early years education and your understanding of how children learn?
Oh, wow. It was in my classroom in New Zealand that I learnt how to teach, because all the things that I had learnt in England and put into practice kind of just worked because the children were just on board with it. But the children in New Zealand were really living in an incredibly challenging environment. And I had one dad came out of prison in order to be able to talk to me and tell me off for telling off his child. And culturally, I had 7 languages. So in the morning when I said good morning in 7 languages, and it would be translated anything I said that somebody didn't understand. And what I realized was it wasn't just about standing up in the front and telling people about it. It was about building connection, building relationships, and deeply, deeply understanding the culture and the children and their family cultures that enabled me to then be able to access where they were coming from and the journey they were taking. And then working in Zambia it came with its own challenges because we were doing tech.
Yeah.
And we had to take that tech into the bush. And one of my schools in Lukulu, for example, out on the western province, was about 5 days' drive. And if I sent my monitoring and evaluation team out there, I might find that they've gone to collect caterpillars for food, and they're not at school. So, but they're off grid, and there's no phone signal, and I'm doing tech, and they haven't got any electricity. So now I have to build a product that can work without ever having come to connect to the internet, or come back into town for an update, or if it goes wrong, we can fix it remotely. And we had to be able to run them on solar, but unfortunately, the locals don't necessarily understand how solar works, so they might plug a hairdryer in, and that's blown the solar on day one. Wow. Not that I'm speaking from experience.
Wasn't your hairdryer, was it?
No, but and CNN came and they wanted to do a documentary on this. Yeah. And they thought that they were going to be in Lusaka and drive 40 minutes out. And no, it's a good old drive. And when you get there, you don't know what you're going to find because you don't know if people are going to be there. But also, understanding for them was the language challenge. So what happens in Zambia when you're a teacher is you get posted to somewhere. But there's 72 languages in the country, and 8 official languages and a 9th unofficial language, which is a culmination of lots of languages. So what might happen, and does happen frequently, is that the children are speaking one language at home. They are in a different place for school, so they get a different language that they're taught in. And then the teacher has come from somewhere else and has a totally different language. So no one is working in their first language.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So being able to make a product that could translate on the fly and enable the children to see their language and see their learning in their own language, and the teacher be able to see the learning in their own language, was really important. But also, for some of these children, and this is just an extraordinary thing, for some of the children, that was the first time they'd ever seen their language written down, because they're oral languages, and we had to write the dictionary in order to be able to make those languages be used for our translation purposes.
Sounds like a considerable amount.
It was, and then writing the teacher training to enable the teachers to be on board as well. It was a big deal, but what it does is make you look under the hood of learning and development, and see what is the bits that make success. And when we were looking at our monitoring and evaluation, it wasn't necessarily, are the children who are using this product better at maths than they were without it?
Yeah.
The question actually comes, are they happier to come to school? Do they spend more days in school? Are they more attentive during the time that they're learning? Are the outcomes of wellness and engagement better? And when we start looking that way, we start changing practice. And we start changing practice, we get the outcomes that say, I'm better at maths.
Yeah.
And so it was very interesting to sort of unpick it all.
Bringing it back around to Oliiki again, because again, I genuinely think this is such a great solution. So Oliiki is centred on turning everyday activities into meaningful learning moments.
Yes.
How do you think early years practitioners can balance, say, structured teaching with a more fluid, say, play-based learning in their settings?
I think if we stop looking for activities, that's a great start.
Yeah.
So if we start saying, how are we filling our babies? Let's go with the babies, the youngest in our settings, and get this right for them. Instead of going to Pinterest and Instagram and early years forums for activity ideas that are seasonal or whatever, let's go back to what does this baby need today for their development? Because when I start looking at the development needs of child A, and child B, they may be the same age and stage, but needing different things.
Yeah, of course.
And babies learn from the simple to the complex. And we need to build these foundations step by tiny step. And babies don't necessarily need big activities to do that, because we can use our daily activities like nappy changing or feeding time to build those moments where we are the interaction and the engagement, but we're also watching really closely. Oliiki is called Oliiki because it's an acronym for what we need to do. We need to observe closely. We need to listen to what the baby is saying. We need to investigate their interests, and then we need to initiate conversation, and we need to kindle connection to instill a love of learning. And if we start with that in mind, and our practice is taken from that journey to the activity, we can spend time just observing a baby lying on the floor.
Yeah.
Really closely in the detailed moment. We will see that actually that baby is really working hard to get both eyes working together. That's called binocular vision. And they need to develop their binocular vision. They need to make their both eyes work together. The reason we need to feed our babies on one side and then on the other, even if it's bottle fed, because we would naturally feed our babies if we're right-handed, left-handed baby, right-handed feeding. We need to swap sides. Why do we need to do that? Well, because when the baby swaps sides, the eye that is up changes.
I never even thought of that.
When we change the eye, this eye is getting stronger. If we're always feeding to the same side, then we're creating an imbalance in their eye development. So if we just simply swap them to the other side for the next feed, we are helping their development.
Stop blowing my mind. I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have occurred to me at all.
No, but it's quite when exactly that. When you begin to pick at child development, it becomes the activity that we need, and that's for me really exciting.
So you've seen firsthand how developmental gaps can widen with children's catch up in their development. So how can early intervention help children not only catch up, but thrive? And what role can parents play in this process?
But parents are king. Because if we get our babies in the term in which they will be 9 months, we've already had 57% of the first 1,000 days, the time when the brain is being built at home. So therefore, over half of the first brain building period has gone with parents who are non-specialists. And quite possibly the last time and the only time that they've had anything to do with babies is being one themselves. So what about we start embracing our parents and bringing them into the fold and helping them learn about play for development in the earliest of days with this amazing Oliiki app that will help them understand how to do it on a daily basis from conception onwards. Because the other thing that's really important is that we tend to talk to parents about baby development once the baby has arrived. Whereas and therefore there can be an implication of judgment. And what I'm saying is if we go back to the beginning and we start when they're not even here, there is no judgment. We're building their foundations of learning for success. If I started a new job, I would expect that someone would show me the toilet, show me the coffee, show me, how you do your filing. I would expect to be shown how to be successful. We aren't doing that with our parents. There is nowhere where we're helping them on the journey on a daily basis. What does success look like for them on their journey? What does success look like for their 21-year-old? Who knows? Because no one's asking them and no one's giving them the tools in order to be able to think that far. So what I'm saying is let's get back to the beginning. Let's go back and help be there for parents at the beginning, and then they will help us build the foundations which we can then use to provide learning opportunities that babies can actually take advantage of, rather than us having to start when they come in and play catch up.
And I think that's such a crucial point in that parents can find it very difficult, or at least feel like they're being judged quite considerably when they're bringing up an infant or a child, especially if they're getting a lot of feedback. And if I don't, well, hang on a second, because I always just find that as much as such as the sector, parents are also very much always invested in the best outcomes for their children, aren't they? So with your background in research, how do you think future trends in early education will evolve, and how can practitioners stay ahead of these trends without feeling overwhelmed?
Wow, that's a big one. Do you know, I think for me it comes down to understanding the why.
Yeah.
And understanding what's at the core of what we're doing. Why are we doing what we're doing? The name is actually, the answer is actually in the name. We do child care.
Yeah.
And if we are caring about the child and looking at the development process of the child, and equipping ourselves with bite-sized pieces of knowledge that we build. No one has all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I'm continually learning because the research is continually coming, particularly in the brain science. It's brand new. They only did the original brain science 20 years or so ago. You know, it's new. The technology has changed. We're starting to see new things. They've just discovered, for example, that babies can do pretend play at 4 months old because they've started to be able to see with the new brain caps that they've got, baby development. Happening in action, and so they can see connections happening in the brain that we haven't been able to see before. So as practitioners, we don't ever purport to know all the answers, but what we do need to do is we need to be able to take those bite-sized pieces of learning daily, regularly, as often as possible, and apply them with the lens of how does this help me understand how this child develops better so that I can care for that child's outcomes. And that for me is what it's all about.
That's such an incredible message and observation.
I think it's really easy in the childcare sector to feel that we're just doing childcare and we're just nursery workers and just this. Actually, fundamentally, we are the foundations of the next generation. Every single day we help build a unique brain for that unique child. And if how we show up impacts that child's brain development on that day. So never think that your job is just childcare. Your job is an amazing job. You're brain building on a daily basis. And that for me is a huge gift for a child because it lasts a lifetime.